Hey, good start. Hi everybody, I'm on Wi-Fi. There we go. Minor little blip there. That would have been great. Literally start this for the first time ever and then Wi-Fi goes out. But yeah, thanks for everybody for joining me for this. This is for a Dice Theme Park live review. But before I get on with that, I just have to do a little message from my sponsor. So please bear with me and enjoy this little promo. As a fellow gamer, you'll understand this is unacceptable. The solution? Head down to my new sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk. KIENDA stocks many of the hot new releases as well as some old hidden gems. Free delivery on orders over £30, further discounts on bulk purchases, and even 5% of your spending refunded back to you as points to be used for further discounts down the line. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to KIENDA and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
Alright, so yes, as before, I've not tried this format before. Usually I do a detail review or an express review for a board game, but I figured I need to get more games done, and I figured, well, I've got the live stream software, why not actually try to get reviews done on the fly? Because not only do I get to cover the game and talk about it, but I also get to ask you, the chat, loads of questions. Well, no, you get to ask me questions, other way around, about the game in case I've missed anything. Because sometimes we reviewers can do that. You know, that does tend to happen. So yes, to get on with everything, let's not dilly-dally anymore and get on with the show. So, overview first. Dice Theme Park, designed by Adrian, I hope I'm not going to pronounce this wrong because he is in the chat, Adrian Adamescu. Hopefully I've pronounced that right, Daryl Andrews, and published by Alley Cat Games. So this is a sequel to another game that people might be aware of called Dice Hospital. Dice Hospital was brought out by Alley Cat Games a little while ago, and it was a fairly simple, fairly streamlined game where you essentially ran a hospital and you used dice in all the different rooms in order to save patients. As you used the dice in the various rooms, they whittled down to like their pip value and then they went away, but you were trying to save lots of patients at the same time each round in order to score more points. But other than that, it was a fairly simple sort of dice manipulation game, and it's had an expansion since. Now, the idea with Dice Theme Park, this is kind of a, in a sense, a pseudo-sister sequel to everything. So it's a tiny bit more complex than Dice Hospital, but in a different way. What you're doing in Dice Theme Park is that you are using the dice to operate fairground rides. So much in the same way as Dice Hospital, you have a lot of these tiles, these hexagon tiles, and you build away from your park entrance. The dice represent, the three different colors represent all the guests that can come to your park, and when the dice gets down to 1, it eventually gets bored and goes away. I mean, that's what guests do in a theme park. And so what you're trying to do is that each of these tiles uses a different operation vector in it. So this corkscrew, for example, requires you to have a yellow die that equals another die, and it will score you 6 points. The one I just had there requires you to have 3 separate dice, one less than this one less than that one. So they've got to go in ascending order, and it scores you 8 points. But what you're doing is that you've got to move the dice through the park to get to the rides first before you can then operate them. Once you operate a particular ride, you have to choose which dice will operate. So in this case, you could put the 2 as the first die, the 4 as the middle, and the 5 as the last one. And then once you've operated the ride, this little cube goes on the ride to say it's been done. You can only do each ride once in normal rules. And then you move one of the dice after moving them down 1 pip. So this would become a 1, a 3, and a 4, for example. One of the dice must move to an adjacent space in your park. and you can operate the park in any order you like. So you can just go absolutely crazy with this, and it's all about the spatial puzzle. Now, as well as obviously just moving dice around, if you just wanted to do the introductory game, that's entirely fine. But what you have is eventually these mascots. You could throw in the full game and throw in these mascot cards, which are essentially like the special abilities in a sense. So the mascot can be put down on a particular ride and it will have some special effect, like change the color type, change the value on the die a little bit, or some other cool special ability like push dice away, or generate money for blue dice, generate points for green dice. They all vary, and these are essentially just the player colors. Now, much like Dice Hospital, you have a starting setup where you have these monorails there. In Dice Hospital you had ambulances, here you got monorails, and you will choose one of these dice in turn order. One of these monorails in turn order, and take all the dice. They will go on your park entrance. Then there's a few phases of buying various improvements to your park, such as special effects and kiosks, to generate more points and money respectively, but also to buy map tokens that allow you to go around the park and move your dice more easily, but also to hire the mascots that I've just been talking about. Now, the turn order is based on the staff cards, and this is where we get to something a little bit more unique than what was going on with the Dice Hospital. Because Dice Hospital, you had like various cards that you used, but you basically just chose the dice and got on with it, basically. Here now you have 6 staff cards, and this mechanic kind of reminds me of, I think Gingopolis has this mechanic, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 6 different staff cards you have initiative values, a monetary value, and a special ability, and everybody's got the same 6 staff members. But what you do is that you play 2 of them for a round. The combination of the dice is your initiative, combination of the money is your income for the round, base income, and the ability you can trigger at whatever phase it tells you to trigger it. This one, for example, the guide can move a die anywhere in the park. This one here allows you to augment a die. I think this is an old picture, because I think the staff member in the box actually has a separate little bit on here, but basically she gets to augment dice. But the cool thing with this is that the initiative value added together dictates turn order. The lower the value, the quicker you go in turn order. So all the things like buying more rides for your park, buying mascots, and all that, those important decisions are done in turn order. So you've got to think about, do I want to use this staff member for the money, for the ability, or should I actually think about, I really want that, I want that tombola stand, or I want that roller coaster. Well, then I might need to go first, in which case I need to play some low cards. Do I have the low cards? And this is the other cool thing with this. Let me see if I can find, nope, I should have more cards around here somewhere. If not, we'll just go with what I've got. Sorry, pictures are kind of all over the shop. There we go, back to the staff ones. So what you do with these cards once you've played them is that at the end of the round, you have to pass the 2 cards that you played to your left neighbor. So you'll give away these 2 if I've played them here, a 2 and a 4. So I no longer have the 2 and a 4. But then the player to my right passes me 2 more cards, meaning that I might get a 2 and a 4 again, but they might have played a 1 and a 6, in which case I'm going to have duplicates, and if I pay duplicates, then great, I get to use the ability twice. So you've got a little element of, if you use the action yourself, you might not get to use that same action for a while yet. You're keeping an eye on the player to your right to think, hang on a minute, are you going to pass me the right cards that I need? But then you also want to look at the player to your left and go, well, I don't want to give you the ones that let you get cheap mascots because you're kind of running away with those mascots. There's a little bit of extra consideration there, and I think that Gingopolis does that as well. I think it's got a similar card system, and honestly I think this card system needs to be in more games, because I quite like this mechanic, but we'll get on to my general thoughts a bit later. So you play over 4 rounds for a short game, or 5 rounds for a full game, and each round plays out the same. You're essentially getting the, let's see, go back to this one here. You get the dice, you buy the improvements, you move the dice all over your park. You can see that it's not the best photo. The cafe's got very bad lighting, but essentially I've moved some dice to these various things. I used a few on a previous turn, so some have gone away, but with this setup I'm thinking, right, I'm going to move this, I'm going to use the park entrance and move this 5 to the twister, activate the yellow die, get a point, some money and special effects there, and then I'll move the yellow die to the pinwheel, which I'll then use with the 2 yellow dice that will now be there. It's that kind of thing. But it's 4 or 5 rounds. You have some objectives that you can aim for more points. They're just standard objectives you find in every game. But it's essentially 4 or 5 rounds of getting some dice, buying mascots and improvements in park attractions, and then performing this simultaneous spatial puzzle with the dice, trying to see how you can manipulate them around the tiles on the board to the best advantage. So it's not enough to just simply go, all right, well, I'll move this die to the twister and then activate it. No, because you're thinking, right, well, that will then put it on the pinwheel at level 3. Okay, then I'll use the pinwheel dice. Right, that puts them on a 2 and a 1. Right, well, in that case, I'll move the 1 over to the splash dash. Right, now I need to get some dice from the duck pond and the snack attack over the splash dash. You can do it in any order you like, and it definitely makes this a more thinky game. But that's the general gist. You go through the 4 or 5 rounds, you have fun operating your park, and then of course the one with the most points is the winner at the end of the day, which you track at the end of every round. So with the general thoughts on this one definitely straddles the line of being a little bit more complicated than Dice Hospital, even though it doesn't have that, shall we say, that thought at first, because this whole thing with moving the dice around on this big board, you think it's simple at first, and I'm generally pretty good at spatial puzzles. But with this, I actually realized that when I play this with other people, especially who are new to games, they do struggle a little bit with this puzzle, trying to figure out the best way to maneuver your dice. It's not that the rules are particularly complex, but it's something that they wouldn't be used to. And so that's why Dice Hospital is a little bit easier for them to contend with. Although, I would make the argument that there's kind of a 6 of one and half a dozen of another, because in this one you've got the spatial puzzle, but in Dice Hospital, you've got the fact that you've got to try and sync up your dice to all leave your hospital cured in a single round. Both of them are fairly complex puzzles for a new gamer to do. But this one does have a couple of tricks up its sleeve to help with that. Firstly, you can play this in 3 modes: short, introduction, and full. The only difference between the short and the full game is that you have 4 or 5 rounds. The introduction version takes out the mascots and the administrators, which are these special powers that you get as a start of the round. I wonder if I've even got a picture of them. Let's see. I forget which pictures I've lined up for this, I must admit, but one seems to be a bit of a pain. Maybe I haven't, but there's one there, he's sort of cut in half. But the idea with the administrator powers, they basically give you a special ability for the game, and that's all they do. But introduction game takes them out. So you have no issues with them at all. And honestly, if you're playing this with brand new gamers, I highly recommend you do that. Because I have had a lot of these games drag on a little bit or cause some confusion because these people are not used to having this spatial puzzle. So brand new gamers, not a gateway game. This is not a gateway game. It's a next step. You might want to start with the introduction game. And the game is still fun even if you take out the mascots and the administrator powers. So you don't have a special ability. Whoopie-doo. The mascots are cool, they're fun, but if you take them out of the game, you still have fun with this spatial puzzle. It's not like it's the end of the world. But with the short and the full game, I'm actually of the consensus that you should never play the full game, or at least not unless you're playing this with 2 players. The player scaling with this is a little bit problematic, I found. It definitely, I'll get onto the solo mode a bit later, but this definitely works as a 2-player. As a 2-player, this game is very quick, very nippy. You've only got to worry about what one other person is doing. Some of the phases are simultaneous, and it goes at a pretty good swimming pace. 3-player, it's a little bit slower. 4-player, it's like the thing is basically a big curve. The time goes up exponentially for a 4-player game, particularly if you are, if you're doing a new game with new players. It's too long. The box on the front says 75 to 90 minutes there, and you are definitely talking 90 minutes at least if you play this with 4 players and new gamers. It really does go on quite hard. Quite long. And so I now am of the consensus that honestly, just play the short game, because it's literally just 1 round less. That's it. There's no other difference. You basically have a stack of tiles, A and B, that you take from during the game, and in a 5-round game, you have 3 rounds of A stack tiles and then 2 rounds of B. If you play a 4-round game, you have 2 of A and 2 of B. whoop-de-doo. So that's not exactly a big deal to take out one round of the game. It's like Citadels on my shelf. You know, Citadels used to have a variant where you only played up to 7 buildings instead of 8. Now it's so much a staple that it's in the main rulebook, and everybody plays to 7 buildings. Why play to the 8th? It doesn't add anything extra. And the same here. I noticed very little difference playing with 4 or 5 rounds, other than it just adds an extra round to the game. Because once you've got about a couple of rounds down, you've got your park, you're kind of set up. You might buy an additional attraction every now and again, but you've kind of got your engine going at this point. And so when you get to a 5th round, all you're doing is essentially cranking the lever and churning out points just like you were doing in round 4. It's not particularly worth it. So player scaling, I think this definitely suits less players than more, it's got to be said. The components of the game are rather okay. I mean, this is Alley Cat games vary with their components, and bearing in mind I'm talking about a retail version here. So just retail, not the deluxe, and with that, I find that the components are fine. You know, they're nothing to write home about, but they do the job. You get these dice, you get a nice white felt bag to use with them, so, you know, there is a decent amount, and if anything, you know, this is the best component in the game. The rulebook is a decent size, but the cards are kind of normal quality. These tokens, these little chits here, are pretty basic, you know, a little bit on the flimsy side, and these attraction tiles, as you can tell here from the photo, are not particularly thick either. Now, this helps to keep the cost of the game down, and honestly, I don't think this game needs to be deluxeified anymore. I think the only thing you get in the deluxe version, other than a couple of mini expansions, which honestly, from reading the rulebook, and they are in the rulebook actually has rules for the deluxe components in there, even if you don't have them. All the mini expansions mainly do is just add a few cards and some new improvements that you could use. Big whoop. If you don't have the deluxe version of this game, it's really not going to hurt you that much. The only deluxe like piece that you get is basically those monorails that I mentioned before. Where do they go again? I wish I could name these. These things, they're replaced with these monorail like miniature things that you put the dice in. It's a bit like it's a slightly smaller scale version of the ambulances you got in the deluxe dice hospital. Whatever. Honestly, I mean, if you're going to get the deluxe, that's fine, but I wouldn't really care too much if you've just got the retail version. But the artwork is decent. I mean, the artwork on the board and the monorails is pretty basic, and you never have to take those, but the artwork on the tiles themselves, you know, it's nice, it's colourful, you know, I wouldn't say it's bad. It's, you know, the characters are fine, it's basic artwork. It's nothing amazing, but it's colourful. It's got a nice cover, it shines, it'll definitely pop on the shelf when you see that cover with the dice in the background and the various theme parks and the cat mascot. But yeah, the artwork on the tiles is fine, and the graphic design is easy to read. You know, it tells you how much it costs. I mean, this is a slightly old icon that's used here. It's actually, I think it just does -7 there. I think it just says $7 rather than -7 coin. I think they've improved that since. But other than that, you've got the park itself, you've got what it does at the bottom, and how many points it costs. It might even have some extra income there. That's all you got to read off a tile, and it's pretty easy to read. The text is not small. All the cards have got, you know, decent iconography and text on them. So if I can find those staff members again, it tells you the initiative, tells you the money. It's got a small hand ability like icon there, and then it's got the enlarged version here. So when you've got them in your hand, you can see what the ability is. Honestly, the artwork is fine. The components are basic, but this isn't that expensive a game, and so by all means, I think it just does fine in that regard. Now going on to something a bit more more positive, the best thing about this game is that spatial puzzle. That is the highlight by far. Dice Hospital, you didn't care where you built things in the hospital, as far as I remember. You basically just put the dice where you wanted them, and that was it. Here, though, you have to get them from A to B. So if we find my park entrance here again, they start here. I've got to move them across. If I want to get to Splash Dash, I've got to find a way to get these dice over to Splash Dash. Map tokens, these ones on the left, flip them over each round, they're good. The guide moves the die across the park, or you try and trigger a bunch of other parks to move the dice for you. But then you've got to think, well, the dice are now reducing in value. The guests are getting bored. So what, do I move them with a map token where they don't go down in value, or do I use it for a park? If so, will the dice be of the value I need when I get there? Possibly. Or maybe hang on, let me activate this witch's hide at the other end there. Activate those, sends that die over to there. Now I can use that with Snark Attack. your brain will fry at times when you're trying to do a fairly, I mean, I think this was turn 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this would have been round 4 that we played. So the final round of a short round game, or 4 out of 5. And even with this many tiles, you can really have a go at trying to come up with an efficient puzzle, because you will see the difference between somebody who knows what they're doing and someone who doesn't by how many cubes they've got on activating all the rides in their park. That being said, I didn't have trouble personally of activating pretty much every tile in the park. I don't think I'm not even certain when I can remember having not activated a ride in my park. I've seen others fail to do it, but I don't know, maybe I'm good at spatial puzzles or what, but I seem to be able to go, right, I need to trigger and move this to there, move this to there, move that to there, trigger this one, move that one to there, then trigger the one in the middle, move a dice to join it, right, activate that park. Oh, the manager says I can activate it twice, right, well, can I get the dice back there? Well, yeah, use the map tokens, I'll just move them back there and activate it again. It's very satisfying, and this is one of the biggest things that elevates this one above Dice Hospital, just having that extra puzzle. It's not just a case of what dice do I need on a tile, it's how do I get them there in the first place. Now, again, this will probably flummox non-gamers a bit, but if you're into games, you will get this fine, especially if you've played other games that are similar. Now, I have mentioned about the guests dropping down from a low value, from high values to low values, and they get bored and leave your park, but that's about as far as the theme really goes here. The theme, much like in Dice Hospital, you never really felt like you were curing patients in Dice Hospital, and here you don't desperately feel like you're running a theme park. These tiles could literally be anything, because at the end of the day, it's just a case of they require different colored dice of different values in order to trigger. It's not really a massive deal. I've just realized I've had the wrong banner down there for ages. Where is it? Where did I put that banner? There we go. That's better. Oh, well. First video, shall we say, teething troubles. But yeah, so it's with that, it means that the theme isn't as easy to explain. I mean, the spooky forest on my tile over there, whatever, it requires a green die. Does it have any relation to the tile? No, not really. The kiosks give you money and the special effects give you points, but really, that is really as far as the theme goes. I mean, the administrator powers are just random powers. The mascots are just random abilities. It's all very mechanical, as much as moving the dice through the park as well. Pretty much the fact that they tick down to 1 and eventually get bored and leave your park is the only main reason that they're there. So yeah, theme is a little bit on the weak side, but then that was the same with Dice Hospital. I wasn't really expecting the theme to come out just because it was a dice game. And this game also lacks a bit of player interaction, and this links on to the other issue I have with the player scaling, that it's not great with more players. There's not a great deal of interaction in the game. Players cannot influence my park. This park I've got here, you can't do anything to it. It's mine, it's my park, my dice are on it, you can't nick my dice, you can't make life harder for me or anything like that, except for 2 aspects in the game. Firstly, turn order, because much like Dice Hospital, turn order is important, and the passing of the 2 staff cards. This is it though, and honestly, having 4 players doesn't really make much of a difference from having 2 players, other than the fact that you're probably unlikely to see the cards you passed around ever again. But that's as far as the interaction goes. This does feel a bit multiplayer solitaire for the most part, especially as some of the parts of the turn, like buying improvements and running your park, can be done simultaneously. They don't need other people's input. Although that brings up another potential issue. The same in Dice Hospital, you need to be very trusting of the people you're playing with here, because you can play the game in turn order for operating your park. And I actually recommend you do. If you're playing this with brand new players, do what it says in the rulebook and run the park as if it was like brand new. Like run it in turn order, take it in turns, go through the steps, make certain people understand. Because when you're doing it simultaneously, I'm trying to think about my own puzzle on the thing down here. I ain't got time to worry about what you're doing. Whatever I'm doing here is important. If you get the rules wrong, well, what am I going to do about it? I have no idea if you've made a complete rules error. I just have to kind of trust that you're going to do that. And that is, well, it's a little bit of an issue, but it's more of a nitpick, you know. I mean, I don't expect people to cheat when they're in games, but somebody could just make a harmless rules mistake, so you really need to know that you've got those rules down, or at least be willing to ask yourself a few questions. Now, before I get on to the verdict, I will say that another positive for this game, though, is the solo mode. And I think the solo mode is one that kind of, it almost kind of saves this game. Not to say that it's a bad game. No. That's not what I mean. But player scaling, I don't think this is as great as a 4-player game. 3 is fine. 2 is really good. Solo is pretty sweet, actually. Solo is done courtesy of David Digby, and in the solo mode, you play, let's see, I actually can show a picture of this one. Here we go. Oh no, this was, did I take a picture of my solo mode? Probably not, but, well, this is just another picture here. But the idea with solo mode is that it's very simple, very few extra rules, but what happens is that you take 2 sets of staff cards, so you've effectively got 12 cards, you have a target number to beat, and then there's an initiative deck. In fact, I wonder if I can if I can find the initiative deck, I'll get it out, but there's no guarantee of that. But the idea, it's too buried in there. But the idea is that you choose what initiative values you're going to do. So you play your 2 cards, and you don't swap them with an AI or anything. You just have those 12 cards for the whole game. So if you get rid of all your 4 cards early, you'll never see them again. But the idea of using the initiative value in that is that you then flip over a card in the AI deck, effectively, which gives an initiative value of its own. And if you are higher than its initiative value, it restricts you on being able to choose certain tiles in the display or certain mascots. Other than that, though, you essentially take what you need, you buy what you got with money, and you run your park as if you were just playing a multiplayer game. The only difference being that you must meet certain objectives during the game in order to avoid your target number to win going up higher. Now, you have about 4 odd objectives to complete during the game, and each one adds 10 to your target score. If you fail more than 1, I think you can kiss your victory goodbye unless you've done really well. You know, the first time I played it, I didn't fail any of the objectives, and I passed just as if I was playing on hard difficulty, right? That was my first game. Another game I played, I failed 1 objective, and I barely scraped a win with 1 point. Says to me that if you fail 2 or more objectives, your chances of winning have drastically reduced. So it certainly is going to be quite tough in that regard. You cannot ignore those objectives. But other than that, the solo mode's actually pretty sweet. It's barely any rules in the book. It simulates the fact that somebody is going to take the tile that you wanted or the mascot you wanted, just like a multiplayer game. The only difference is that you don't pass 2 cards to a neighbor and get 2 cards back. You just simply start with 12 cards. But, yeah, I mean, that's all it is, but it works. In fact, honestly, I'd rather play this game solo than with 4 players. You know, and, I mean, David in the chat says, yes, if we're not playing simultaneously, then yes, it is going to be very slow, but I'm only talking the first round here. But even if you play 4 players with the simultaneous rules, the game still does take a little bit long. You know, 5 rounds is fine because you do get to play more like B tiles more often, but even then I didn't find it that much of a difference between that and a 4-round game. I kind of prefer that I wanted the game to stick to its 60-75 minute time limit rather than just have an extra round. Now, of course, yes, if you play the game with with players who are familiar with the game, then the game's going to speed up naturally. But this is one of those types of games that I'm going to be teaching players a lot, as opposed to playing with the same people all the time. So I need to think, well, what's the better way to do it then? Short, full, intro? I've got to make that decision on the fly. But yeah, solo mode's really sweet. Simple, does the job, and I get to do what is the best part of this game, which is the spatial puzzle. It's my favourite part, and whether I'm doing it with other people or just by myself, I'm happy. So I'd just pull this out, crank out a few pieces, and just simply go, yeah, I'm going to play the solo mode for 30 minutes or 45 minutes tops and that, because I'll be there in Deep 4. It honestly works. It's pretty solid all round. So, with that said, overall verdict, I do like this one a little bit better than Dice Hospital. Dice Hospital, I was kind of okay with. I think Dice Hospital I rate about a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, but probably more a 6 now because I like the game fine, but it just didn't win me over as much. This one though, I think elevates more to a 7 out of 10 overall. This is definitely better, I think, than Dice Hospital because of that spatial puzzle and because of the staff cards that you've got. They elevate the fun factor of the game. All that spatial awareness stuff is good. Now, if you don't like spatial awareness games, you're not going to like this. That's kind of a given, really, in itself. But, component quality is fine. The solo mode's really good. So if you want to pick this up for, occasional times with the family, but you want to play the solo mode yourself every now and again, honestly, the solo mode is pretty sweet. I just think that it does have a few issues with player scaling. Like, playing with 4 players, I think, doesn't add much more compared to playing with 3 players, apart from just more admin to keep up with and more time lag. But then you've also got, the theme is not amazingly strong. The components are only semi-basic, and there's not a huge amount of multiplayer interaction other than turn order. But it does a good job. It's a cute game, an improvement over the original. 7 out of 10. I still think this is worth picking up. If you like Dice Hospital, I think you'll like this one probably even better. But, if not, you'll certainly like them on par. I can't imagine you would hate one and love the other. I don't think that's possible because they do have a similar style of play. But, yeah, a spatial awareness dice game that's not too difficult to learn. The rules are easy. It does a good job at a 7 out of 10. So, with that said, yeah, that went on a little bit longer than I thought. All right, forget the whole 15-minute thing that I mentioned. But sorry, I haven't been paying attention to the chat because obviously I've been doing the review live. So with that said, now's the time that if you think I've missed something in the review, or if you want to ask a question about the game that I haven't answered already, ask it now. Get it in the chat, or just leave your comments in there and we'll wrap it up early. I don't mind. Obviously, David's happy that I've at least like his solo mode, so yeah. I was afraid that David was going to turn up and be like, please like it, please, I'm sorry, he's going to be mean about it. It's like, nah, honestly, I like the solo mode in this one. And yeah, I do like a lot of solo modes in games. It's just, a solo mode for me needs to be like shall we say, a simple thing to pilot. I'm not the biggest fan of AIs that take forever to do. Garfield games do some really good solo modes with an artificial intelligence. David Digby's solo modes are usually more a case of, right, how do I give you a multiplayer experience but without giving you a ton of rules to learn on top? It's why I don't tend to go for the big, I've got Vital Lacerda games here and stuff like that, and it's all well and good that they've got very nice, well-designed, clever solo modes, but it takes me ages to learn the rules and pilot them, and that's just not really what I fancy. But yeah, I'm curious to see if anybody else has got some... how do I mute James? Sadly, I wish I knew that. I think I'd have to put him in timeout, but I don't want to do that because James is always the first one here. But honestly, has anybody got any questions about the game? As I say, get it in the chat. Was there something not explained? Anything you want to know? Obviously, I haven't played the deluxe mini expansions. They are what they are. They're just, one of them just gives you a few extra cards and tiles, and the other one just gives you a few a few little extra improvements that you can do. But honestly, yeah, retail deluxe, you can kind of go with whichever one you feel like and it will do just fine. But no, it doesn't look like anybody's got any particular questions on the game. As I say, Alley Cat Games are going to be selling this one at UK Games Expo, and I think the Kickstarter might be fulfilling to people there. Good to see them, Adrian, in the chat as well. Hopefully I didn't butcher your surname when I was trying to pronounce it, but yeah, this will be good. So I'm going to say, let me know your thoughts on the game in general. Let me know your thoughts on the live review format when we're done. It's not easy trying to do it on the fly and make certain you don't forget anything. I'll try and improve on the pictures front next time, but it does allow me to get more stuff on the games done in relatively quick time, saves on editing, and we'll do this again. I'll try it a few more times and see how it sticks. The next one I'll do in a few days' time, and it will be based on, if I can grab it, here we go. There we go. Eternal Palace will be the next one. Yes, the second one by Alley Cat Games that I've got. The potential, I say potential because I don't want to give anything away yet, Kingsburg Killer. And I'm sure David will probably be on the edge of his seat with that one because he also did the solo mode in there. In fact, I've just packed the game up about 10 minutes before the stream because I was playing the solo mode today, but not going to give away any spoilers for that. So yeah, that's it from me. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple review. Remember, as always, it's only a game and support small creators. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you soon. Take care now, and bye-bye. See you next time.